In Neville's book, The Power of the Awareness, there's a chapter called Failure. And I don't like framing it as failure personally, but I can understand the message. But for me, I think it's more about there's like you can make mistakes. I've made mistakes. I felt like with Neville's work, and I kind of just want to talk about some of the mistakes I feel like I made and continue to make sometimes. But there's really just an overwhelming mistake that is worse than all the others. But the first mistakes I felt like I was making was I was applying too much pressure on myself mentally. It was like I became a police officer inside, and instead of sort of learning how to imagine the way I want, I was policing myself instead. Instead of actually imagining what I wanted, I was policing myself. Instead of imagining being something else in my mind, I imagined being a police officer or like a judge. Or like a critic, right? You can be these are the roles we can play within our own minds. And sometimes if we will find someone in our minds that represents that feeling, right? If you have someone in your mind and you use them to judge you, then yeah, that person is the symbol of a judge. You just personified that feeling. So we have to get used to feeling new things. So that was another thing. So the first thing was that I was applying too much pressure with policing and everything. And then I thought that I had to constantly change my thoughts. And that became exhausting really quickly, like within a day. I just couldn't, I was like this. And I tried it. I was like, I'm going to keep going. So I did it for like a couple years. I tried to just focus on changing thoughts. I realized not only did I not get results fully that way, I also didn't really feel, I felt worse. And I started noticing that it's not exactly the thoughts, right? Because Neville says that someone can assume having wealth, but in their depths, they feel where's the next dollar coming from. So the depths, what we feel in our depths is really what matters, right? So I realized I was focusing almost too surface, just like the thought itself, and then changing that thought. And I thought that had to be the wrong way. And so I tried to treat it more lightly. I tried to just imagine things that I liked, and that was another. Not necessarily a mistake. That I was heading towards, to me, the right direction, but I still was applying so much effort. Like I had this knee-jerk reaction to see if things were going to happen. Again, just very anxiety and fueled type of thinking, like always searching, never really living in fulfillment, always kind of living in a sort of a when is it going to happen? This like sort of wonder. And then I had and again, this isn't exactly a mistake, but I just noticed within myself, I had a big fear of the how, and I actually had a fear in changing how I felt about myself. So when I would go to feel something new about myself, or just something new within me in my depths, like let's say you lived in insecurity for so long, going to feel secure can feel frightening. So for me, it was very scary. I'd almost have like my heart would race when I would go to imagine myself a different way. And that's not exactly a mistake. It was just something I noticed. But again, it kind of is a mistake. The mistake is that I didn't have to be afraid to feel different. By framing it as an expansion on my feeling, I was able to let go of guilt, of worthiness, and of any kind of blockage when I saw that the goal is to expand feeling within me. That I can feel victorious even when the world tells me I'm not. That I can reframe things the way I need to provide me strength within myself, right? I can view things as an act of survival, that I survived something within me, some devastating nightmare, instead of viewing and letting that nightmare destroy me, things like that. So again, I wouldn't call that a mistake, but that was a mistake I felt like I was making. Another mistake that I felt like I was making, especially in the beginning, was I thought I had to have the perfect details and thoughts. It's more about the energy or the feeling that is implied with the image, because it's not really what we're looking at that matters. It's what we see. So, and what we see, in my view, also connects with how we feel. Again, it's not really what you look at that matters as much. If you pay attention, it is what you see. And I was focusing so much on what it looks like rather than what I see. And I realized that when you realize that it's about what you see, you can change what you see all the time on command. because it's just perception, and perception is not bound by the senses. So you can always view things, again, you can view yourself any which way you want at any time you want, and you can play with perception. So once I started realizing there was more of a playfulness to it, more of a planting of the seeds, letting go of the how and the when, and knowing that I'm planting and I'm expanding, feeling, once I framed it that way, the biggest mistake became not doing it. That became the biggest mistake. If at any point during all my mistakes I stopped doing it, I wouldn't have reached this point now, or with how I apply it. And now I've realized it should be certain goals. You should set goals instead of trying to set perfection within. The goal is to expand the feeling. The goal is to feel the reality of what you've imagined. The goal is to feel it real. The goal is to imagine what you want. The goal is to find strength in imagining what you want. Once you do that, the goal is to plant seeds within, and these seeds are dreams. And the way you plant a dream is you see the fulfillment of it. You embody that fulfillment. Once you see it that way, all of a sudden the pressure is off. And then it becomes you not doing it. Right? We are the operant power. So that is the biggest mistake, is to not do it. For me now, that's what it is. And at times I catch myself not doing it. Neville did too. I mean, I think it might just be kind of I'm just telling you so that you don't feel alone in your mistakes. I've made a lot of them, and yeah, at this point, I feel that the only mistake I have now is if I'm not doing it, if I'm not practicing it. That's what it is. If you notice, if you listen to Neville, he really pushes you almost in every single lecture to try it, to just keep on trying. You might not get it yet. You might police yourself. You might guilt yourself. You might shame yourself in the beginning. You might fear yourself and giving yourself by giving yourself nightmares. You might feel after the wrong things. You might not know why you're feeling after these things. You might be scared to feel something new. You might be worried about what would happen if you did feel this new thing. What would happen if you did change? You might have that fear. You might start off like that. But if you just keep going, it becomes lighter. It becomes easier. It becomes more purposeful. Now you have a purpose to imagine, and it's to feel it real. It's to not doubt myself, but imagine myself exactly as I want to be, and see myself that way, and accept it and embrace it with, you can say grace, or just a true acceptance of it, and a non-judgmental acceptance of what you've imagined, and make it lovely, and accept it with no judgment, and no expectation. Just accept it for what it is, and you've planted it, and you just keep doing that and doing that, and then it just becomes, you won't receive a harvest, right, if you don't plant your seeds. So if we're going to keep receiving harvest, and that's just what we do, we must start planting. So the only mistake now becomes is whether or not you're planting or not. And it's really true. It really is true. One thing I've noticed is that if you just sort of stop using it, you don't lose it. And you never lose it. So in one of Neville's lectures, I Am the Power, he says that you can imagine unlovely things and bad things, but you're actually not losing any power or energy. You're just misusing it. And the moment you come back to using it right, you feel energy is restored. So you can't lose this energy. You can only really misuse it or not use it. And when you don't use it, life does become very stale. It starts to just stale up like bread. And, one thing Neville said that I love, and it stuck with me, is if you know this law, you can never be bored. He says these things, and how true are they? We don't really know, but I love to think about it. He says, if you know the name of God, which is I Am, the creative power name, the name that has a creative power to it, you can't be bored. Or it's like when he says, if you know this law, you can't worry. I mean, these things are, when he says them, they spark something within me, some strong inspiration. And how true is it? So you go out and test it. But if you make my mistake, which is to not do it or not use it at times, you kind of do, you kind of just stay the same. You just kind of coast. And that's not always a bad thing. It's not always a bad thing. You know, sometimes you don't eat the bread that day. That's okay. But at some point it gets stale. And when life gets stale, it's time to imagine something new. Yeah, so that was really, that's all I had. I just wanted to share some mistakes that I made. And if you notice, the mistakes are not really anything to be punished over. They're just, you just have to correct it. And the correction always leads to more freedom and fulfillment. So it's always a really good discipline. It's a really good correction. So if you're feeling in bondage, you're making a mistake. If you're staying the exact same because of fear, you're just making a mistake. You don't have to be afraid. Things like that. If you frame it that way, it becomes very easy, and actually it makes life more fun and vibrant, less stale. And so that's all I had for this one. If you're interested in my books or one-on-ones, just go to the description. It's all there. You can get all the information. But yeah, I just wanted to at least kind of remove the feeling of maybe being isolated in mistake making. You know, we kind of I think that this Neville's work is kind of it kind of allows variance, but also that can also come with mistakes too, in my view. But again, I don't really know another word other than to call them mistakes. But yeah, you don't have to be ashamed about it. But okay, you guys take care.